Is all the way from Yellowstone, and she works with wolves, and she's going to tell us all about our Arctic cousins.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed walking through the halls this morning as we were getting ready and seeing all of the visions of the Arctic that you guys have been learning about. And I'm here today to talk about Arctic wolves and some other species that I met while I was working up there. But a little bit of background about me first. My name is Kira. I'm a scientist and a wolf biologist. This is me when I was really little. Do you mind if we cut these lights too? Great. Everyone can see that okay? This is when I was probably in about 2nd grade, and I loved animals. This is me holding a little goat here and outside. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. I kind of thought I love animals so much, so I want to be a veterinarian. I didn't realize as I got older that I could actually study animals that are living out in the wild and watch them doing their natural behaviors. And I had no idea that I would someday be able to study wolves across the world. This is my handprint next to a wolf track. Who here has a dog at home? So many of you. So dogs, every single type of dog that you can think of, from the little Chihuahuas to the huge Great Danes, they are all related to wolves. If you go back far enough, their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, hundreds and thousands of years ago, were all wolves. So we can see some really cool, interesting behaviors that our dogs do that you'll probably recognize in some wolves that I'll show you. Now, when I was growing up, wolves were had this reputation as being scary animals, or the big bad wolf, or Little Red Riding Hood. Some of you might recognize this from a movie. This was Beauty and the Beast. Who recognizes these guys? What movie? Frozen. Exactly. A pretty recent movie. This is a really recent movie, and let's make sure we listen up, guys. This is a really recent movie, yet wolves were still used as the animal that was scary. Now that's not the wolf that I really know. The wolf that I know is more like the Jungle Book. They don't interact with humans as much, but they are a family, they take care of each other. The wolf that I know has all different types of families. And so there's this kind of nuance that we can see where there used to be this bad reputation, and now it's a bit more realistic. Now I work in Yellowstone, and I'm going to get to the Arctic in just a second, but we have these wide open valleys. I drew a star here. This is where we are in Pacifica. Yellowstone is about 1,000 miles from here. Some of you may have even been there. There's mountains, there's valleys, there's lots of trees, there's lots of wolves of all different colors. This is me with wolf. Now this one is sedated. So I'm putting a radio collar on it in order to track it for the rest of its life. The wolf doesn't know what's going on. So even though its eyes are open and it's sometimes blinking or yawning, it's sedated for about 3 or 4 hours while we take samples. We do all kinds of things that we need to do as scientists, put on that radio collar. And then for the next few years, I use the tracking equipment to be able to find it. And then I can watch it through binoculars or through a spotting scope. And then sometimes I actually fly in a little plane and find them from the air. Every once in a while, we do see them fairly close. This is one of the closest that I've ever seen the wolf from the ground. Sometimes they have to cross the road in order to bring food back to their pups. And then other times we set up trail cameras, and we can actually see the wolves going about their daily life, doing their things with their families, and they don't know the camera's there. Generally, they're really afraid of people. They try to stay away from people as much as they can. Of course, any wild animal, we want to give them their space. And so we make sure that we don't get close enough to scare them or to get them used to people. And so we set up these cameras to get some cool views of them. This is a whole family of wolves walking past an antler. Some of them just walk on by, and then other ones have to stop and sniff it. One of my favorite things about wolf families is that They can be any type of group of animals together. There can be parents with their offspring. There can be sometimes just moms, sometimes just dad. There can be adoptive wolves that live with the pack that have become the family. There can be wolves that have traveled all around and just met each other and become best friends. Now I'm going to move on to Ellesmere. So this is Ellesmere Island. This is way, way up in the Arctic. It's actually a little bit closer to the North Pole than it is even the Arctic Circle, which I'll show in a second here. But because of the did we bump something?
So, one of the fourth graders actually said that electricity department. Sorry.
Okay, how many of you worked on the art that's out in the hall and drew some photos or some of the animals in the Arctic? I saw a bunch of Arctic foxes. I saw Arctic foxes when I was in Ellesmere. How many of you drew the polar bears? Those were really cool. I haven't seen any polar bears, but I have seen the polar bear tracks. How about the owls? I saw some, maybe that was some of the younger kids, some of the snowy owls. I actually watched the snowy owls as they swooped, and they were being harassed by some of the other birds there. So they were kind of doing this aerial battle back and forth. But the animal that I focused mostly on was the Arctic wolf. Now there's a big difference between wolves that live in the Arctic, where they don't run into very many people. There's hardly any people up on Ellesmere Island at all. There's only one village that's at the far southern end of the island that only has about 150 people living in it. And so I went up to Ellesmere Island. It took about 9 different flights to get there. Yeah, it's about 4,000 miles away. So remember I mentioned that Yellowstone is 1,000 miles from here. This is 4 times further, and it's almost at the North Pole. It's actually the furthest landmass, as close as you can get to the North Pole when you're just on land. And I saw a bunch of icebergs. Icebergs, of course, are mostly freshwater, even though they're floating around on salt water. And so you can chip off ice and you can actually put it in your soda and drink it because it's mostly fresh water. I did do that. And there are pieces of, if you take off ice from an iceberg, there's actually little